The President of the United States is federal. How about the United States Congress? Are they federal? Then we don't have to do what they say either, do we? I'm sorry. But this is true. And I'm going to show you more evidence about this. But if we don't have to do what the President says, if the President can't tell us what to do, and the United States Congress can't tell us what to do, does that bring up a question? How did the EPA get the authority? They're a bureaucracy, never elected by anybody. We gave it to them. And the states and the people have fallen asleep, and we've allowed this to happen. And now, there's a way to take it back. Peacefully. And that's the main thing about my whole solution here. It's peaceful. You get state and local officials to join us in this. Get we the people, with our sheriffs, county commissioners, state reps, governors sometimes, but they're sometimes too busy being political too. We take it back. And we can get back that balance of power. We can. Now I'm going to keep going here. Look, this is again, Justice Scalia. It is incontestable that the Constitution established a system of dual sovereignty. Although the states surrendered. Now, he's wrong here. And I've got proof of that too. Did the states, when we formed the federal government, surrender our power to the federal government? We surrendered. We surrendered. What word does the 10th Amendment say we did to the federal government when we formed the federal government? Delegated. The 10th Amendment says we delegated powers to the federal government. If you delegate to him, and he doesn't do it right, you take it back, huh? Because he's the boss, he's the delegator. Just like we are. The federal government didn't form us. We formed them. Who's the boss? Exactly. Now, Scalia makes a big comeback here. He kind of corrects himself. On the next page, he really corrects himself. But regardless, the states retain a residuary and inviolable sovereignty. If we in Arizona were inviolably sovereign, do you think we could run our own education, our own health care, our own Grand Canyon, our own resources, land, water, air, you know? Oh no, we have to have Washington, D.C. run every facet of our lives. In my book on the front page of The County Sheriff, America's Last Hope, I quote Jefferson. He said, "When all government should be drawn to Washington as the center of all power, it will render powerless the checks provided and become as venal and oppressive as the government from which we separated." End quote. When government becomes venal and oppressive, to whom can the people turn for peace, safety, and liberty? If not the very person who swore to uphold and defend the Constitution. My dear friends, we have such in every state and in every county. What did I say? How do we take back American liberty? County by county, sheriff by sheriff, state by state. It's true. Now I've got more evidence to show you. Residual state sovereignty was close. Do you know what I'm showing you here? Justice Scalia, U.S. Supreme Court, Mack versus U.S. Okay? Residual state sovereignty was also implicit, of course, in the Constitution's conferral upon Congress, what? Of not all governmental powers. What a shocker to those guys, huh? They don't have all governmental powers, then what kind do they have? Scalia says that. But only discrete, enumerated ones. What? They tell us all the time that they can do anything they want. That they're all powerful. Which implication was, oh my goodness, what have they been telling us? They have been telling us that the Constitution is livable, breathable, moldable, flexible. It's a rubber band. Make it go wherever you want. Do you know that your poly-magicians, that's a new word I made up for my book. Do you know the poly-magicians in Washington, D.C. want you to believe that? Because if they don't tell you that, then they're the biggest criminals on the face of the planet by intentionally subverting the Constitution. So they have to tell you that it's moldable and breathable. Or they're liars and crooks. Oh yeah, that's a hard stretch. Yeah. It was rendered express. That the Constitution was rendered express. Do we know what that means? It was rendered absolute. How? By what? He says it. rendered express by the 10th Amendment. Folks, who's supposed to enforce the 10th Amendment? We just talked about that. It's the states. It's the counties. It's the state officials. It's the local officials. We interpose on behalf of the people, enforcing the principles of the Constitution. And the 10th Amendment is where we get that responsibility and power. And read it. All powers not delegated to the United States by the Constitution are retained by the states, respectively, or by the people. Shows the power of the people, doesn't it? Because, remember the triangle? It's upside down. Federal government, the president are down here, the people are up here at the top. We are the most powerful part of the American experiment. Okay? Now, Scalia goes on. The great innovation of this design, the design of our government, was that our citizens would have two political capacities, one state and one federal. Read the next line. Each protected from incursion by the other. If the federal government comes in here to commit incursions, who's supposed to stop it? State officials, sheriffs, county officials. We do. We the people. It's all of our duty. Do you really believe that we the people have the ultimate power and the only way we get that is because we vote? Come on. They've already stolen that and ruined that too. Come on. Now he quotes Madison. You see what Scalia did not do in this decision? He did not interpret. And can you find anywhere in the Constitution where the Supreme Court is supposed to interpret the Constitution? You won't find that anywhere, will you? They're supposed to do the same thing the rest of us are supposed to do. Uphold, defend, protect, and preserve. In other words, enforce the Bill of Rights, not interpret. Do you really need somebody to interpret it for you at the U.S. Supreme Court what shall not be infringed means? Isn't that amazing that the Founding Fathers, to protect the God-given rights that they're forming within the Constitution, made one right specifically shall not be infringed, and that's the one that's infringed the most. Isn't that amazing? And they want you to believe that they're not crooks and liars. And all you have to do is look at the IRS and the gun control proposals and you know exactly what they are. Just the opposite. So, as Madison expressed it, the local or municipal authorities, I told you he mentioned the counties, and he does it again later when he says political subdivisions. Local or municipal authorities form distinct and independent portions of the supremacy. We share the supremacy, and the federal government has very limited supremacy. What kind of supremacy do they have? Discrete and enumerated. They have very little authority, and it was done intentionally so. You know, the entire Constitution was written to make sure the federal government remained impotent.
Failed, unfortunately.
We have failed miserably. Yes. Because we've allowed it. What did the Founding Fathers say that we had to do? The price of freedom is eternal vigilance. And we went to sleep. We're waking up, and we can take it back. And we can do so peacefully. Look at this. This separation of the two spheres. What two spheres are we talking about? Federal, which is very small. State, which is huge. The separation of these two spheres is one of the Constitution's structural protections of liberty. Just one of those little things called structural liberty. State sovereignty is a structural protection of liberty. And he compares state sovereignty to the other three branches of government. Just as the separation and independence of the coordinate branches of the federal government serve to prevent the accumulation of excessive power in any one branch, a healthy balance of power between the states and the federal government will reduce the risk of tyranny and abuse from either front. When you came to this convention, did you hope to see a way to prevent tyranny and abuse from the federal government? Scalia just gave us the solution. A healthy balance of power between the states and the federal government. There it is, folks. I couldn't say it any better myself. Do we have that healthy balance of power today? That is a joke. I'm glad you laughed. All of you should have, because it is a joke. And there's a lot of jokes in Washington, D.C. And we need to make them irrelevant in our lives. And we can. We can. And the solution and the formula are right here. You go to cspoa.org and you can see hundreds of sheriffs standing together. Over 12 state sheriff's associations telling the federal government to take their gun control proposals and shove them all the way up 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue. And now Scalia kind of summarizes all this by, hence, if we do this, if we enforce the 10th Amendment, a double security arises to the rights of the people. The different governments will control each other at the same time that each will be controlled by itself. Is there any question as to whether or not the federal government will control itself? Anybody, please? Please stand up and shout. Okay, thank you. Total silence, I knew it. It's a sad deal. But we've got to take it back. We have got to be the ones that will control each other. And we've got to stop taking the money from Washington, D.C. And how do we best not take the money from Washington, D.C.? Don't send it there!
You got it.
And I'm not kidding. We've got to stop it. What do they do with our money? Oh, and we can't balance the budget. Have you heard any of them, Republican or Democrat, saying, where should we start if we have to cut back? Our own salaries, our own pensions that are crazy out of control in the first place, especially pensions. Serve in Congress 4 years, 2 terms, get a lifetime pension. Ridiculous. And that's how they take care of each other. They do, they take care of each other. That's how the foxes take care of the hen house. They take care of each other. Okay? Absolutely, state sovereignty and people within your own communities with a little courage can stop all of this. The power of the federal government would be augmented immeasurably if it were able to impress into its service, and at no cost to itself, the police officers of the 50 states. They have no authority to do that. And there's where Scalia re-emphasizes and restates the obvious. And this is my favorite quote from the entire decision. But the Constitution protects us from our own best intentions. Can you imagine the United States Supreme Court saying such a thing? That the Constitution protects us from the welfare state? Or taking care of the poor? You mean we can't be forced to do that? You mean forced charity is wrong? What? You don't want to take care of the poor? Yeah, I do. Just don't force me. That's when it becomes unlawful, unconstitutional, and a sin. You force me to take care of the poor, it's not charity anymore. It's tyranny. But the Constitution protects us from our own best intentions. It divides power among sovereigns and among branches of government precisely so that we may resist the temptation to concentrate power in one location as an expedient solution to the crisis of the day. Have you ever heard that before? The crisis of the day? Well, what's the mantra of the Obama administration? Never let a good crisis go to waste. Even if you have to create one. Oh, they would never do that. There's absolutely no trust in this government, and there hasn't been for a long time. It certainly hasn't just been Obama. But folks, we're headed for disaster, and we can stop it. And we must rely on state sovereignty and the Constitution and the 10th Amendment to do so. This is the order of the court. Started gold. The federal government may neither issue directives requiring the states to address particular problems, nor command the state's officers or those of their political subdivisions to administer or enforce a federal regulatory program. What does that do to Obamacare? We can nullify it. We do not. Where do you think it's going to be enforced? Counties, counties, and counties. States, states, and states. And we tell them to, shove it back up 1600 Pennsylvania. It matters not whether policy making is involved, and no case-by-case weighing of the burdens or benefits is necessary. In other words, he's just saying there, the Constitution protects us from our own best intentions. That's what he's restating there. Such commands are fundamentally incompatible with our constitutional system of dual sovereignty. Now I know we've got to go. And again, back at the table, come by and get any of my tools. I'm going to close with one thing though. Remember the training I took from Justice Scalia? No. From Dr. Skousen? Remember I told you about the training I had, the police training? We had 240 big tough cops at his seminar to learn about the Constitution. And at one point he had us all stand up and he took us through a little kindergarten exercise. And I call what he did to us that day, what he taught us in that 10-minute period, I call it American political prayer. And I close every one of my presentations the same way, with this little kindergarten exercise. I want to dedicate it to each of you. I want to dedicate it to my grandchildren and my children, because if I do that to them, I'm doing it to yours. And I know a lot of you don't have grandchildren yet. You're so much younger than I am. But I have 9 grandkids and 1 on the way next month. And my first grandchild was born on the 4th of July. And her name's Liberty. Liberty LaDon Mack. And we all need a little liberty, don't we? And so I dedicate this to her and to you and the Founding Fathers, and in particular, Dr. Skousen and Judge Roll. 2 people who changed my life forever. And this little political prayer goes like this. We, the people of the United States, in order to form a more perfect union, establish justice, ensure domestic tranquility, provide for the common defense, promote the general welfare, and secure the blessings of liberty to ourselves and our posterity, do ordain and establish this Constitution for the United States of America. And that's the eagle. Long may she be free. Thank you so much for being here.